From St Margaret's College, after 3 years of politics and a pandemic like no other, the people of Christchurch will have their say. Brought to you by the New Zealand Herald and the Canterbury Employers Chamber of Commerce. This is Your Vote 2022. This is the Christchurch mayoral debate.
It's our great pleasure to host this important event tonight. The turnout is another great indication of the level of interest in our city's future leadership, which will change in just 2 weeks. Local government affects each and every one of us and for a role in either facilitating or hindering growth. The election of a new mayor in just 2 weeks' time will have a profound effect on the direction of our city and that direction that will happen over the next 3 years and how the challenges that continue to affect businesses are addressed. The Chamber has produced a document outlining the expectations of the business community for local government over the next 3 years. We encourage you to take the time to read it and copies will be available in the foyer. It outlines 3 priority areas which we will explore with the mayoral candidates this evening, including using the levers of council in terms of how it disposes to facilitate economic development and growth, to future-proof our city and to improve the governance and administration of the council itself. On that note, welcome to Phil Mauger and David Meates, our 2 candidates you will hear from tonight. This is their 23rd debate in the last few weeks. So well done to both of you for the work that you've done across the city in that period of time. These candidates were chosen by the members of the Chamber as the 2 whom they would most like to hear from. Welcome also to other mayoral candidates who are here this evening, and the 2 that I know of, and apologies if some have arrived that we weren't registered. We've got Mark Churnside and Peter Wakeman, so thank you for joining us here this evening as well. Thank you all for taking the time to be here. We encourage you to join us at the conclusion of the forum for refreshments and networking in the foyer. And we also encourage you to engage with other mayoral candidates in the attendance tonight and also those who are standing for council. We've got some of those people in the audience as well. Welcome also to the Mayor of Ashburton, Neil Brown. Thank you, Neil, for joining us tonight, and Deputy Mayor of Christchurch, Andrew Turner, and also current councillors in attendance. I'd also like to acknowledge Chamber board members here tonight, Paul Duvall, Mark Elliott, Oliver Hunt and Charlotte Sullivan, and also to our life member, Peter Townsend. Thank you also to Chamber's principal sponsor, Westpac, and our major sponsors, Enable and Orion, for their ongoing support of the Chamber. Tonight's event is also proudly supported by Mint Design, the Chamber's capability partner, and thank you to the New Zealand Herald, who are also live streaming this important event. It is important in times like this that everyone has access to information to ensure they are able to make a well-informed decision when it comes to casting their vote. Before we get started, just some brief housekeeping issues to cover. In the event of an emergency, please leave the auditorium via the green exit signs, and the assembly point is in the quad area outside the auditorium. The wharepaku, the bathrooms, are located in the ground floor and the atrium in which you entered, and if you can please make sure that your cell phones are on silent. The format for tonight will begin with a short statement from each candidate, followed by a facilitated debate on the priorities and expectations outlined by the business community. There will also be an opportunity for you to ask questions, and as I said earlier, we'll aim to finish around 7 o'clock and we'll follow with some refreshments in the foyer. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce our moderator for this evening, a very experienced local journalist and reporter for Television New Zealand, based here in Christchurch. Please join me in welcoming Ryan Boswell.
Thanks, Leanne. It's great to be here tonight. We've got a lot to get through, so let's get started. This evening's going to give you the opportunity to hear from 2 candidates selected by the audience vote in the lead up to tonight. In terms of today's format, we'll open with the candidates, each telling us about why they're here and why they're standing for mayor. They'll be asked in order of surname. They each have 2 minutes, and then we'll be going on strict time as well. We'll then have a facilitated discussion with both candidates. Then you'll have the opportunity to ask questions. And then to close, we'll have a final pitch from each candidate on why we should vote for them. Now, candidates will hear a bell signalling they have 30 seconds left when speaking individually. They'll also hear a bell during the discussions, which signals 5 minutes until that session comes to an end. Because there are a fair few of you here today, and we're streaming online as well, we're making it a bit easier by putting questions via a new interactive online platform, which is very easy to use. To ask questions, you simply go to www.pigeonhole.at/chamber, and instructions are on that site. If you have questions during this presentation, please go ahead and ask those via that online platform, and they'll be addressed at the end. Now, we'll try and get through as many questions as possible. You also have the ability to vote on a question that's similar to your own or that you particularly like. And of course, the ones that have most votes, they'll be put at the top of the list. Right, let's get to business. Let's get started. It gives me great pleasure to start with Phil Mauger. Phil's currently the Christchurch City Councillor for Burwood. Prior to that, he ran a family business, Mauger's Contracting, for more than 20 years. Phil has now resigned from his business to focus on running for mayor. His number one priority is to rebuild people's trust in council and to make Christchurch the best place to live, work, invest and play. Please welcome Phil.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Leanne. And thank you, everybody, for coming along to this fantastic building. I've never been here before. It's really good. I'm running for mayor because I want to regain your trust in council and get stuff done. In the latest resident survey, only 42% of you had faith in what we do. This has got to be turned around. I see the role as mayor being a civic leader of our city. My vision is to make Christchurch the best place to live, work, invest and play in New Zealand. And this requires a mayor who helps to put Christchurch on the map. Christchurch and Banks Peninsula, for that matter, we mustn't forget them. A mayor who ensures that we're not forgotten as the second largest city in the country. And I will work with anyone from anywhere for the best outcomes of the city. I know I can make a difference as mayor, and I've got 6 ideas that I believe will make this happen. Finish our roads and footpaths. 2, regain ratepayers' trust in council. 3, look after our environment, because we only get one. Make Christchurch an even better place to live, deliver core services better, and keep our rates affordable and reduce debt. I can bring my experience to the table to get this done. For the last 3 years, as Ryan said, I've been a councillor for the Burwood ward, which I've thoroughly enjoyed. I also serve as a council-appointed director and trustee of Otatahi Housing Trust, Transways Canterbury and Ngāhui Whā National Marae. I was born and raised in New Brighton and have lived in Christchurch all my life. My wife Chrissy and I have 5 kids and 9 grandkids between us, and we're very fortunate they all live here. I've run our family business for 45 years and worked building roads and footpaths all over the city. I've now resigned from that business totally. I know what it's like to do business in Christchurch, and I want our kids and grandkids to be able to do the same into the future. I'm not a politician, I'm not a bureaucrat, but I know my experience and my skill set and my dedication to Christchurch, and working together, we can make this the best place to live, work and play in New Zealand. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Now we're hearing from David Meates. David was born and raised in Christchurch and cares deeply about the future of this city. He was, of course, the CEO of the Canterbury District Health Board from 2009 until 2020. David is now committed to using his experience, leadership skills and collaborative approach to working with residents to make his hometown New Zealand's most attractive and vibrant city. Please welcome.
Ina mana, ina reo, ina iwi katoa, hi mihi nui, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko David Meates sako ingoa. Who am I? I was born and raised in Christchurch. While having an Ag Science degree from the University of Canterbury Lincoln College, I've worked across 3 very different sectors. Firstly, as a farm advisor. Secondly, leading a large-scale transformation in the retail sector in the UK. And health. And I was brought into health at a time when the government was looking to bring people with commercial experience to sort out the mess of health. For the past 12 years, I've led 2 district health boards, Combined, the Canterbury and West Coast District Health Boards were one of the largest businesses in New Zealand and the 7th largest employer in New Zealand. During that time, I've led the responses to New Zealand's largest natural disasters, terror attacks for Kāori White Island, and the initial COVID response within the Canterbury and West Coast regions, along with overseeing the largest capital program ever undertaken in health and the creation of what is still regarded as internationally as one of the most integrated health systems. I'm standing for Mayor because I see the huge potential Christchurch and Banks Peninsula has. However, we need a different way of doing things if we expect a different outcome. Christchurch should be a place where people want to live, to thrive with energy and passion, a place fostering world-class innovation, a city that courageously connects with its people, protects and enhances its environment, encourages our business community, in short, a city that offers fair opportunity for everyone, and it takes leadership to enable this, and this is what I will bring. Local government is fundamental to our democracy and the quality of our lives and well-being, so we need to make sure that we get it right, build on what's working, and change what is not. I bring a wide range of experience and the motivation to do the very best for Christchurch and Banks Peninsula, and I will ensure that this is a council that you can trust and have confidence in to deliver on what is promised.
Thanks, David. If I can invite you both to come back on stage, please. Now, don't forget, audience, to go and put your questions into www.pigeonhole.at/chamber for the questions section a little later on, and you'll see it just behind me at the top of the screen there. Now, to get us started, the Chamber have put together a local government directive that outlines 9 recommendations around what their members and the wider business community would like to see from the new council. I'm going to start the discussion with questions based on these recommendations, focusing on facilitating economic growth, future-proofing our city, and guidance and administration. Just a reminder, we'll hear a bell when we have 5 minutes left in our discussion. So as we've talked about already, the Christchurch City Council does have a mandate to support economic growth and has a significant role to play in facilitating business. The Chamber of Commerce, of course, published a document outlining the business community's expectations. I'm assuming you've both read it? Yes, good lads. So we're here to explore some of those expectations. But first, in your own words, can I get you to tell me what you think the business community expects from the Christchurch City Council? And we'll start with David.
Leadership and collaboration. And it's one of the things that I've heard back from so many different parts of the community, business community and others, that actually there are so many different businesses that want to collaborate to make this a better place, but find it incredibly difficult to do so. So collaboration is a fundamental part. And I think the other part is creating a shared vision for what Christchurch is. And it is interesting to reflect on that many people in Christchurch today can describe what Auckland is, or what they think it is, what Wellington is, what Queenstown is, what Christchurch used to be. And they're struggling to describe what Christchurch is today. They'll describe a lot of really cool things that are happening, but not in the essence of what it is to be from Christchurch. And I think one of our collective challenges is we've got so many amazing businesses, startups, innovation happening in this community that are not part of our narrative as a city. And I think that's one of the fundamental bits, if we're really going to support economic growth, is to change our narrative about the city.
All right. Phil.
Thank you. Supporting economic growth. I do know what it's like to do business in Christchurch, and as I said earlier, I want our kids and grandkids to grow up and be able to continue doing that here in the future. The council can support economic growth by delivering our core services better and keeping rates affordable. One of the things I want to do is talk to our consenting staff, because consenting is an issue that people are quite concerned about, and identify the rules that councillors have imposed on them and that are clogging up the system, and see what we can do to remove them. Now, I'll give you an example. Every new house that is built in Christchurch is allowed to take 20 cubic metres of soil away from its site as of right. If you take more than that, you need a resource consent. I know for a fact that every house in Christchurch that is getting built now, because of the earthquake, we take more away, there's 100 cubic metres to take away. So there is, every house needs a resource consent. It goes to follow that there are 4,000 sections getting built in Horsell at the moment. That means there will be 4,000 resource consents needed. If we change the number from 20 cubic metres to 100, that's 4,000 resource consents our guys don't have to do. If they take an hour to do each one, that's 4,000 hours. That's one person for 2 years. So if we simplify that, it gives those guys more time to do things on other things and hopefully bring back the consenting time, because that is, as far as a businessman's concerned, that is hard for me. Taking actions to promote Christchurch and attract a competitive location, and attract more business events and people here, ensuring that Christchurch remains a viable location for our existing residents.
All right. The majority of business surveyed by the Chamber believe that the council is disinterested and difficult to deal with. Phil, you've been on the council for the last 3 years. What do you make of this?
One of the reasons that I got into council in the first place was I used to go along and see my dear old mum and dad, and because we were contractors and dealt with council in the past, you're right, you say, oh, there's got to be a better way, got to be a better way. So that's what encouraged me to get in there and see how it happens. I've been 3 years in there, I've seen how it happens. A lot of things go very well. The staff work extremely well and they're a pleasure to work with. But I can see ways that we can make things a little bit easier.
All right. Do you have similar concerns, David? What do you think about this?
Absolutely. I'm still yet to hear too many people say that they're really enamoured with their engagement with the council. And it's not necessarily because of lack of wanting to, but I think one of the kind of the broad challenges is that actually you've got a council that is often pretty much under attack from those that are elected as councillors. And there's one of the things that I really do know from organisations when they're under attack. They become defensive, inward-looking, risk-averse, and generally less responsive to need. And I think there's something there that we're needing to look at, resetting the tone and the direction and the expectations of the council to deliver. And it needs to become a much more outward-focused and comfortable with partnering with business to solve some of the gnarly problems and grab some of the opportunities that are facing the city.
All right, so just on that, how will you ensure that you make informed decisions that consider the interests of the business community?
I think it's really important that decisions around the council table need to be being made in the best interests of the city. And that's one thing I've heard back consistently, is there is a sense that that is not always the case. And too often it is a fragmented and disjointed council table that are making decisions, sometimes with information that may not be coming through or presented in the best possible way. But that also reflects the tone and the culture that has actually been set right from the top, and that sits around the council table.
I've sat on council meetings, or sat in council meetings, Phil. Mm-hmm. Thank goodness I haven't been elected. But I have seen a disconnect between the councillors and the council staff. Do you see that?
In some respects, yes. But no council law or council staff member goes to work to do a bad job. They're all doing their best. Some council staff put it across a little bit different to councillors. You could say maybe some councillors don't understand that it has to be really put, some things. So I'm good at understanding what roads and footpaths and buildings and businesses like. I'm not that good at other things like sustainability and that, but I am helped. The council staff go out of their way to help you get up to speed.
So give me some ideas and give me specifics here on how you will help the business community flourish with council.
Well, we've got to lead and foster a can-do approach across the whole council and to support and enable development of projects. As Mayor, I want to spend more time out listening to the community and understanding what's happening, and take those views back to the council table and understand what's happening and identify where we can support economic development in Christchurch.
You don't think that's been identified already?
No, well, we all these business leaders out here, they know their stuff. They just want to put stuff onto us, and we've got to embrace that and say, how can we help you? Because if they're busy, the city's busy, we're all happy. At the moment, I take my hat off to a lot of people here, especially in Hospo, that have been struggling over since maybe the earthquakes, or certainly since COVID. Like, if you guys have survived this long, you can almost survive anything. But we've got to make it better for you guys to enable you to make money and have good business.
But you must have some idea. You're a businessman yourself, and you're simply wanting to just go out and talk to the public. Can't you give me something a bit more specific?
Well, what's right? Here we go. I was wandering down the strip the other day, and I talked to a guy who was cleaning his footpath at one of the bars. I said, "How's it going?" He said, "Mate, I have never been so busy. Since that convention centre has arrived, the people coming down all the time, there's more people in Christchurch." So that's one thing that's happening. We've got the Metro Sports, which is going to happen. We've got the stadium, which will happen. Every one of those will funnel people into the city, and the more people we get in, the more these businesses will be happy. So we've got to get people in.
David, specifics, please.
Specifics, actually, what's really important to enable the environment to flourish here is to repair the relationships between central and local government, because those are broken, they're fractured, and they do help create the environment, or both good and bad, for businesses to work and operate within. We also need to, workforce is a really significant issue and challenge for just about every business and industry across the city and the region. And we need to be developing a cohesive region-wide and city-wide approach to why people would want to come and choose Christchurch as the place of choice for work. One of the things that is very evident, if you do work in Auckland or Wellington, you have much greater choices and options with employment. That's not the case in Christchurch at the moment, but COVID does provide us with an opportunity in terms of people being able to work much more flexibly that we also need to be grabbing hold of. That is something, if we're going to really deal with workforce in the city and move to a true high-wage economy, we've got to do it in a coordinated and planned city and regional approach, because we are competing with the rest of the country, and we're also competing internationally.
Okay. Let's talk rates, because with local government, we know it's a hot topic. So rates have increased progressively for both ratepayers and businesses. Do you anticipate those continuing to increase on your watch, Phil?
When I first got into council and did my first LTP, now for those of you who know what an LTP is, you'll shudder, because it was a big ask. It was, wow, this is it. We were charged by the CE, we've got to save $39 million. Every project that we were doing as council was on a list. They were all around the wall, which boom, 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 boom. So we spent a number of days. I remember one day we went down all the list, and we got to the point where we were just getting into the hang of it. Oh, we saved our $39 million, we don't need to go any further. And I thought, well, this is great, because we could have gone a little bit further down, and there's some stuff there that is not absolutely necessary at the moment. So if we can trim out, and we're heading for a cost of living increase and increase in interest rates. I used to have 24%. I know what it's like, and when money is very, very tight. We've got to help people and not make rates increases as much as they could possibly be. So if we can trim out some stuff that is not that necessary, I'm not saying it doesn't have to be done, but we've got to cut our cloth to do what we
like. What? You've already had a look. What's going to go?
There's a couple of things we can do. We've got a lot of land and building surplus stuff that is absolutely no use to us. We collect land like a squirrel collects nuts in the winter. We've got some pieces of land that we've had since 1918, and we're not getting the money of grazing it for what we pay ourselves in rates for it. So it's little things like that. We've got a piece of land out in West Melton, right on the boundary, that used to be where they dumped the night carts for cover up. So there's a place with the stuff we can get rid of.
Okay. David, what are your thoughts on rates?
Rates is an interesting conundrum, in that it seems to still be the only vehicle that local government and Christchurch City Council gets to. Also, having made a decision about the stadium, which I do fully support, what I struggle with there is actually the lack of forward thinking in terms of engagement with neighbouring councils, but also how that's to be funded. And the way it's going to fall is on rates, and that is going to increase rates. So we do need to think much more creatively about how we're going to use some of the assets of the city and how we're going to approach differently to come up with different funding models to support that, which is not about rates. CCHL, Christchurch City Holdings, that is meant to be responsible for governing some of the biggest assets of the city. It's a bit of a shambles at the moment, and it needs to be sorted, because that needs to be delivering the appropriate commercial return. But I'm really concerned already that actually for the last 3 years, 70% of approved capital has only been delivered, 2019, 2020. There's an issue about delivery that I do think we need to focus on. And already there are so many different projects that have been pushed into the future. And just to give you a couple of examples, New Brighton roading and transport improvements, 7% of the budget has been spent. Stormwater drainage deferrals of 5.5 million. We cannot keep deferring and compromising choices for the city to balance off a rigid approach that we're taking to rates at the moment. We've got to be more creative.
So are you suggesting that we scrap projects that are earmarked for the future?
Well, I find it really interesting that actually decisions have been made to defer projects on the basis of actually by deferring capital it's not spending it, on the basis they've already been approved and have already been consulted widely with the community. And it is an interesting position that the council finds itself increasingly getting into. It cannot approve projects and then not deliver on them, and then change their mind a few years later and not deliver on them, or keep on deferring them. Because all that is doing is building up an increasing bow wave for us as a community, or for you as a community. We need to think differently about that as well.
Right, so are we expecting, therefore, you're just accepting the fact that rates will rise under your mayoralty?
No, we're needing to think different. Yeah, I think we've lost a big opportunity around the stadium. And to me, it's still beggars belief that actually, up until 2 months ago, we've only just started the conversation, or not we, the council has actually started a conversation with neighbouring councils about funding. Now, I know how I'd respond if I was one of those councils. And Christchurch is just engaging now because we've got an issue. But I do think we need to be thinking smarter about leveraging off and using the assets and the balance sheets that we currently have potentially under Christchurch City Holdings.
Okay. Phil?
Ryan, sorry,
Yeah.
can I?
Yeah.
One thing, David is right to a certain extent. One thing that I noticed when I first got into council, and Dawn came along and she threw a new way of doing a long-term plan. What was happening every year, council staff would say, right, last year we was this, so 10% more, 10% more. We got to the stage where we were rating for $700 million, and there is no way in the world that we can physically do that. There's not enough people here to physically do that. So we wanged it back to around about 500 million. But even last year, we overrated for 100 million, and David's right. We said we'd do this, and we didn't do it, because you can blame COVID to a certain extent, but there was a lot of stuff that wasn't done, and we had $100 million that we had to put forward into the next year. So we were overrating. So we're trimming it back to what's a dream and what's realistic.
Okay. Phil, you've said you want to deliver better core services while reducing debt and keeping rates affordable. Mm-hmm. How do you do that?
One of the things I want to do with delivering core services better is things like, as I said, doing footpaths and roads and making sure that's what people get up in the morning, they put their rates demand on the fridge, they walk out the door and they say, oh, my water's leaking, my rubbish is not collected, my footpath's broken, stuff like that. That's the stuff that people pay rates for and expect things to be done, and we're not doing those. So 50% of the complaints I get are about things like that. If we can change that round so that people aren't complaining about things that we can fix simply, we'll be a lot better off.
All right. David, you've ruled out selling council assets entirely. How do you therefore make sure that there is additional funding coming in?
I think, again, that's starting to use the assets that actually the city has. And one of the things is actually the value of assets have grown enormously over a period of time. And it is interesting when you go back to the earthquakes, Christchurch City Holdings contributed 400 million to the rebuild off basically looking at balance sheets. And I think when we're starting to look at long-term intergenerational assets, we're needing to think differently and smarter than just rates. But we've got to be really careful with statements about, well, we can just trim off a bit here and a bit there, because there's been a lot of conversation about actually we can save millions out of cycleways, until you actually look that it's contributing 0.07% to the rates, and most of it has increasingly been funded centrally. So you do get to the point in putting some real, kind of hard figures that if we went down to 3% rates at the moment, just to give you a sense of where that is, $53 million of operating costs would need to be pulled out, and about 300 million of capital projects would need to be stopped. I just want to put that into context because you then get to the basis of which of those you're going to stop. Because somewhere across the city, someone is not going to get what has already been an approved project being delivered.
Phil, you've talked about red tape and bureaucracy. Without mentioning the dreaded RMA, what's the one regulation you think the council needs to get rid of?
I think if we make it, we've got to make it easier for people to get their resource consents in town, building shops, doing all that sort of thing, because people put their money on the line, and I'm so thankful to all these businesses around here that have really put their neck on the line, saying, I'm going to do a business. Some of them actually started a business on the proviso that the stadium would be here 2 or 3 years ago. It hasn't, and some people have actually lost their money. But if we can speed that up, because then you can get your money, you can get your building built, and you can start getting money back from it. That is the main thing, I feel.
David?
I think regulations, we spend a lot of time waiting for something to change. And when we're waiting for that, it's no longer our problem. I think we need to change our attitude and approach to this. Things like consenting, there is an attitude within the council, if it's enabled with slightly more risk-taking and freeing up some of the simple, basic activities to speed up turnaround times, those sit absolutely in the domain of the council. They do not require a change of regulation. Because if we wait for a change of regulation, we'll be waiting a long, long time. And that, while it is nice and safe and comfortable to say, well, actually, we can't do anything because our hands are tied, changing the attitude and the approach enables you to use the regulations that you've got at the moment in a way that is focused on optimising outcomes and getting things done.
Okay. President Liam Watson said that Christchurch is teetering on the edge of either capitalising on progress that post-quake environment facilitated or at risk becoming irrelevant. Do you agree, disagree with her, David?
I absolutely agree with that. I think we're at a real cusp. We have got so many things sitting in foundations in the city, whether that's been businesses, innovations, startups, the arts sector, some of the community initiatives, even some of the environmental stuff that is happening that's not just great, it's world leading edge. It's just not part of our narrative, it's not part of our story, it's not who we identify and tell others, or indeed tell ourselves about. And we run the danger of, and this is why the relationships with Wellington and Christchurch are so important to get repaired, because we can run the danger of blaming them for whether we develop or not. We've got to be compelling as a region. We've got to reclaim being New Zealand's second city, and we've got to reclaim actually being the capital of the South Island. And we've got to be much more comfortable in our role, in the leadership role across the South Island as the gateway to the South Island. So that's partly to do with we've got a choice as a city as to whether we're going to grab those opportunities, or if not, we can become a really simple town.
Phil, do you think Christchurch is at risk of becoming irrelevant?
Oh no, absolutely not. We've got a couple of good friends of mine, we've got real estate firms, and the number of people that are moving down from Wellington and Auckland to Christchurch because we're more affordable, it's good. We've got 8,000 people living, or probably up to 10,000 people living in town now. We're looking to get to 20,000 people, which is good. They're coming in the door, but as I said before, we've got the stadium, Metro Sports, and Te Pai. You add that into the town hall, all of Ngāpunawai out there with the international running track and the water hockey, things like that. We have got everything, and anyone that wants to do any sport, and I've said it before, I think with what we've got at Riverside, where people have put a lot of time and effort into it with all the wee laneways and stuff like that, we're right on the cusp of being the place, the sporting and events capital of New Zealand, and we could become, and some people don't like me saying this, a mini Melbourne, because I love Melbourne. I think you can walk around, do all these things. We've even got a tram. So I think we're right on the edge of greatness, I really do.
All right. Let's talk central government, because we know that the relationship between council and the current government is fraught with quite a few issues at the moment. You both have, or I haven't heard from either of you at this point on the issue of three waters, ensuring ensuring we've got the right infrastructure for the future. David, are you for the proposed reform or against it? What's the alternative?
I'm going to give a yes and a no. And what I mean by that is actually, do we need as a country to change the way that we're approaching and dealing with the three waters? Absolutely. Because with the significant underinvestment, and even Christchurch, with some of the best infrastructure in the country, is still a 19th century system design. However, the way and what's been proposed does not make sense. And the reason for that, it has become a centralised structural solution that removes local voices from making decisions and being involved in choices and decisions around their community. So, do we need to think differently about how we're going to deal with some of those big issues? Yes. Is what's been proposed fit for purpose and going to resonate with anyone? Absolutely not.
Phil, do you like three waters?
Absolutely not. The thing that really got under my skin was when the minister came along and said, right, we're thinking of three waters, come and jump on the bandwagon. Here's $40 million, which you can spend on your water, which we did, thank you very much. At any time you can jump off this wagon and get off. We're not forcing you to stay. Our staff worked right through Christmas. They were up to their neck in work. I felt very sorry for them. And then we find out that we could never have got off the bus anyway because they'd already made their mind up. Okay. Now I look at the likes of, say, Polytechs have been centralised. I read in a paper about a month ago that all the Polytechs, because it's costing so much for the bureaucracy, the Polytechs have been told to trim their prices by 3%. Now, that's the last thing you want to do. And I can see Three Waters being the same thing. We're losing a lot of $6.9 billion worth of our assets away. We know what we're doing in Christchurch. We've got secure wells, we've got secure backflow preventers. We're working hard on the delivery pumps, so we're actually in very good shape.
You're already waging war with the government at the moment over intensification, though. How difficult is it going to be for the council to have a decent relationship with central government if you're continuing to bat away what the central government's putting out?
Oh, central government take the likes of intensification. Goodness knows why they got together and did that bipartisan thing. I still can't understand that, but anyway, that's life, that's water under the bridge. But we had 17 residents' associations come to us a couple of weeks ago and said, please don't do this. Right? We've bought houses out in the suburbs because I want a front lawn, I want to grow some veggies, I want to do that. This is the lifestyle I want. I have no trouble with intensification in town, in the thick of town, and maybe half a kilometre away from busy streets, busy feeder roads, so people can walk to the bus, get into town, and that's the way I think it should work. But I don't think it should be out there. But you're right, the government could come along and say, aha, you're not playing the game, and come in with a big stick and give us a clout. But I need to get up to, or whoever is, we need to get up to Wellington and have a very good heart-to-heart conversation with the minister and say, Christchurch is a different setup to an Auckland and Wellington problem, which I think's been descended on.
David, intensification, and can you work with the government, even though it might be trying to impose policies that the council might not agree with?
Yeah, interesting enough, I've actually got a long track record of working with governments, both national and Labour, and getting to starting with a starting point of actually no capital being invested in health in Christchurch as part of the rebuild, to actually dragging across the line about 1.4 billion of construction. So it's a matter, again, sometimes tensions can exist, but what you've got to be really clear about is a compelling rationale as to why government needs to finally get to the point of saying, yes, we need to work in partnership with you. It may not be their starting point, and that's where it comes back to the relationships and building relationships with central government is so important. But to do that, we've actually got to have a compelling rationale for what it is we want. Now, intensification is a really good example where councils around the country bitched and moaned about the need for intensification and couldn't do under the existing rules. The government has responded and given them the solution. The problem is the solution doesn't work for the city. And part of that is we've got to be careful what we wish for. Is You've got the legislation you wanted, councils, now you're not happy with it. So it's really easy now to say we don't want it. What we've got to be really smart about is being really compelling about, so what does the different looks like? Because I, for one, don't agree with the scattergun intensification process that will happen under the current legislation. But we have to be really clear what the alternative is, because we do need to intensify, and we do need to do it in a really planned and structured way. Purely and simply, we've got a population that's going to continue to grow. And if we don't plan it, we're going to end up with a really dysfunctional mess as a city. So part of that is actually we've got to go back to government with a really clear view of what a fit-for-purpose intensification process looks and feels like for Christchurch, and to get their support to enable that to happen. And I think that's the big opportunity we've got. The easy part of saying no has happened. The more difficult bit is saying, so what? What's the alternative and how would we go about doing that?
All right. Now we're going to move on to questions from the audience. I unfortunately have my iPad over there, so I will go and grab it. More water. Thank you.
I thought it was you throwing your pen.
Very kind.
Dry as a wooden
Thank you. Working together. We've got a fair few questions that have already come through. One from Anonymous says, our roads are falling apart. It is years since I've seen a tar and chip truck, which used to be a regular sight. How's the council going to play catch up to fix our broken roads? David?
Well, the first bit is actually there's a lot of money that's been approved for roads and they've not yet happened. Part of that is again one of the only ways that it's going to enable that to happen is working constructively with the private sector. And while there are a number of contracts already in place, part of that is needing to be looked at in the context of how do we go about speeding this up and responding, because there are parts of the city which is really hard to still look at after a decade of not having been repaired. And certainly the further east you get, the sense of actually no one gives a toss about our area, which may not necessarily match what has been planned, but the issue comes down to what communities are seeing has been delivered. So actually it is a focus on delivery, how collectively and how do the council partners with the business community to actually deliver on its commitments already on roads and other infrastructure.
Phil?
So, yeah, roads.
They're not looking good, Phil.
No, they're not. No, I know a bit about roads. Take the likes of, I've been cracking on about this for a while, but take the likes of Rolleston Ave outside the museum and Christ College, from the boat sheds, more or less, over Hereford Street down to the bridge, Armour Street Bridge. The council have said that they're going to spend $5 million doing that up. Now, I believe that that can be sweated a lot further. It's not knackered by any stretch of the imagination. We can take that money, or some of it, or all of it, and take it out to the eastern side of the town. Go and drive down Maces Road in Bromley, where they've had to have the organics processing plant, and the fire hasn't helped them at all. But we need to swing the pendulum more over to doing stuff on that side of town, which it's absolutely necessary. It's not that necessary in town, and there's 3 blocks of Gloucester Street which are on the same group. So that's $15 million worth of money that I think we can just push it out. I'm not saying it doesn't need doing, but push it out and prioritise on things that make people happier, because those people are paying rates over there every bit as much as the people in town, so they deserve to have a better result.
I guess just further to that, central government has provided council for, about $40 million to deal with some of the roading and other issues. What I'm intrigued about is how much of that's been spent. About $3 million. To date. So we've got to be really careful about actually always the issue not having the resources. It's again how it's applied and actually how it's delivered.
All right. What will your council do to specifically address climate change, Phil?
One of the climate change, we declared a climate change emergency in 2019. One of the things that I applaud ECAN for doing. I talked to a good friend of mine, the Mayor of Queenstown, Jim Bolt. I said, how on earth did you get people on buses? He said, we tried $2 bus fares, and I suggested that here a while ago, and they probably didn't listen to me, but they have adopted that, and that's happening in February. And the good thing about what we're doing here in Christchurch is $2 if you want to go for 2 feet or 200 kilometres, it's $2. If you're under 25, it's $1. I went and saw the university, and I talked to the head person, the lady, and I said, what's your biggest issue? She said, all these students live here, but they go to Lincoln. If it was a $2, or if they're under 25, $1 bus fare, they'd sell their cars and just use the bus. So it's things like that to get people, and we've got to make it attractive to get people into buses and change them all over to electric or hydrogen. I'm a bit of a hydrogen nut, but I think hydrogen for heavy equipment is great. And the other thing, plant as many trees. We've got 600 hectares of the red zone, which we talk about canopy trees are disappearing with intensification. Red zone's an ideal place to put as many canopy trees as we like, because no one's going to complain how big they get.
David, climate change, how are we going to deal with it?
Well, we're not going to plant our way out of the climate change. And for a council that has declared a climate emergency in 2019, it's been very slow at being able to get on and deliver a lot of things. And yet, in spite of that, we do have the Otakaro red zone, 600 hectares of land, largely in the centre of the city. That is a plan that has been consulted on to death, that just needs to be got on and delivered. There are hundreds of thousands of hectares of land on the Banks Peninsula that are now being covenanted by private landowners to go back into regeneration. But if we're really serious, and I think one of the most significant innovations that I've seen is actually a community group in Littleton funding a carbon coach that is now working with about 250 families, looking at how to turn that into an economic benefit as opposed to often the way we look at climate as a cost. But I think the big challenge for us is carbon neutral city. And how do we do that is actually engaging and embracing businesses, the universities, and the innovation that sits in the city to look at how do we create a different economic approach to climate change. Because quite frankly, until we start adjusting our thinking about what future businesses look like, we're going to continue to probably end up not delivering on a whole lot of things. And the one thing that I've had back from every young person that I've met, the one thing that is absolutely consistent is climate change is their number one priority. And they're pretty grumpy with our generation for not taking it seriously or doing anything to deal with it. Right. And yet they're a community that are purpose-driven, but are so disengaged. They want to be part of, but actually local government for them is a big yawn and something that actually they don't feel their voices heard, and we need to change that.
Another question from the audience tonight. How will you improve the culture and ultimately the performance of council staff? We're hearing stories time and time again that things aren't great at the moment.
So culture is, quite frankly, unless the culture changes, things will continue on. But culture starts at the top. And what I mean by that is that starts around the council table. Warring councillors fighting and arguing amongst themselves, not providing a unified view of where the city's going, doesn't inspire a huge amount of confidence. And also those same councillors, if they're attacking the organisation they're responsible for governing, called the council, the one thing that they do tends to happen is they become defensive, as I said earlier, inward looking, and delivery tends to drop. That is all about culture, that is all about governance, that is all about leadership. And quite frankly, unless culture is changed, and it needs to be modelled from the top, because that is where the expectations start getting sent for actually what's expected from the council.
All right. Phil?
When Dawn, CE, started 3 years ago and 2 days earlier than me, she has gone through the top 3 tiers of the council organisation, and I can see it. She hasn't gone through the hacking and burning or anything like that. She's sorted out and got some really good people there. I can see a difference now in 3 years in the spring of people's step and the brightness in their eyes, that people are a lot more, interested. It's working well. But one of the things I used to do in my old company was that I would go and talk to the guys a lot more out the people down below that get the culture right. And I'd go along and talk to the guys and say, oh, what are you doing this weekend? And what are your kids doing? And stuff like that. And I could do it with 40, you can't do it with 2,500, but we need to start doing that. Now, I used to walk up and down the different corridors in the council, in the building, and I was told, oh, please don't do that because you're intimidating the staff. I still breathe oxygen and go to the toilet like they do. I want them to know that they can come and talk to me anytime they like to change the culture, because some people down there have got extremely good ideas because they're at the coalface and can see how they can save money and make the place run.
Are you not allowed to talk to the council staff as a councillor?
I'm encouraged not to walk. I can talk to council staff if I jack up a meeting with them and they come to the meeting, but to go and just walk along and to be fair, they've got their job to do, and the last thing the boss Dawn wants to do is have me go and holding them up from their job. But they discourage me from going down and just having a yarn sort of thing. So I want to go along and meet and get a bit closer.
Do you have confidence in Dawn?
Absolutely. Yes, no doubt.
David?
I think it's the wrong question. To me, I actually think it's kind of what's playing out in the council at the moment is a breakdown between governance and management. A classic example of councillors not acting as good governors and actually an organisation responding to the incentives and the signals that are sent to them. That is actually what you look at. Doesn't matter which organisation you look at, they're the classic symptoms. And if you have a high-performing organisation, and let's call this the council, with good governors and a good culture in there, that is the most powerful, and those are the characteristics that sit behind any successful organisation just about anywhere in the world, and it really doesn't matter which sector it is.
Okay, another question from the audience is, do the candidates support the 50-50 split with Māori on the governance board for government's water infrastructure plan, Phil?
I voted to join that Communities for Local Democracy. And along with 32 other councils, we joined together, and the Communities for Local Democracy moved in and did their bit to the select committee and it put their submissions in. It's all good. Then it was pointed out to us that we didn't actually do it right, and we didn't ask our mana whenua colleagues before we joined. Okay, so we didn't do really the right thing. But Communities for Local Democracy have pushed the barrow as far as they can. No more oxygen can really come out of their mouth because they've done a fantastic job. So it's up to us to work better with mana whenua going forward, because there is a lot of things coming up for council coming forward that we need those guys in the tent to work together, and it'll be better for the whole city.
You don't necessarily want representation that's guaranteed by the local iwi?
So you were saying the likes of, say, having board members or council members like ECAN have got? We talked to, from what I'm told, we've talked to Ngāi Tahu who are involved in our building, and they said they were happy with the way it is and they didn't require us to do that yet.
Okay, David?
I'm used to working with co-governance. With district health boards, we always had 2 Māori board members. If they weren't elected, 2 were appointed to the board. And I think the term co-governance has got horribly muddied with the conversation around Three Waters, and that's got confused with actually co-ownership. That's not what co-governance actually is about. And my understanding of this is still about actually the involvement of appointment to boards. It's different from actually ownership. Now, the one thing that frustrates me about Three Waters is it has got so confused and so loaded and lacking understanding about actually what's going to work. To me, it's become detrimental the way it's been discussed because we're having the wrong conversations. So, this is not about 50-50 ownership. That's not what co-governance is. It's not actually what co-governance means.
Okay. One thing we have got with the Avon River corridor, we've just started up a co-governance group with mana whenua and us. There's 4 mana whenua and 4 council people, and I'm looking really forward to seeing how that works, because that could be the promises, could be the way of the future. I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see how it goes, and I'm looking forward to it.
However, with that one too, is they will come up with recommendations that go to council, and council is still the ultimate decision maker.
Okay. Phil, this one's specifically for you. Why are you funding candidates who support you to ensure you only have like-minded people around the table? How's that transparent and open-minded about working with everyone?
What I did, yes, I did give a small amount of money to a small amount of candidates, because what they were doing, they were going out and using their time and effort and money, putting my name on their flyer and putting it in a letterbox. So I thought, if you're advertising me, the least I can do is help you out a little bit.
All right. You have given details of where your funding is coming from.
Some, not all. Yeah.
David Meates, who's funding your campaign?
Lots of family, friends and other connections.
There's lots of talk around town that you're connected to Labour.
I am not, and I can be absolutely categorical on my campaign team. I do have Gary Moore as the campaign chairman, and on the campaign team I have people from National, Labour, right across the political spectrum. And the reason for that is, one is I've never run a campaign before, having stood for politics, and therefore actually having someone that's experienced, and that is actually really quite important. And I think that also reflects of actually getting the right skills and competencies around you. And that's why diversity is so important. There's nothing worse than getting a group of like-minded people around a decision-making table, because you go down some horrible spaces and you lose the view, the spread, and the input from the community. What's really important is actually how you weave that together into coherent conversations. And that's the bit where stepping into the District Health Board is a really wonderful example of a dysfunctional, warring set of tribes, sitting within that professional tribes, of enabling and getting them to start focusing on what's really important and engaging those same people and actually co-designing what solutions need to be. That's why diversity is really important, and you, the community, will make the decision about who you're going to have around the council table. I don't get a choice to, who those are going to be, but what is important is actually how you then work with them. It's the same with government. You don't always like whether it's National or Labour or whoever is in power, but you've actually got to work with whoever's there, and that's the main reason I have never ever aligned with any political party.
Phil, you've got to respond to this.
One of the things that, coming out of the blocks in August last year, which some people was daft, it was too early, but I think it's worked out pretty well. But one of the other things that people have got an interest in this election in particular, there are 5 people not standing, the Mayor, the Deputy Mayor and 3 others are not standing. So there's a lot more interest. So we're going to, regardless of what happens, we're going to get 5 new people at the table. But one of, I get told, I will work with anyone that's around the table. Now, one of the people that are standing in my ward is a young fella called Kelly Barber. Now, he stood as People's Choice, he stood as Labour, and he's lost both times. I've encouraged him to stand as independent in Burwood because he has been my chairman of the community board for the last 3 years. I have never had a cross word with him. Everything is just, let's get on and do it. And he's the kind of person, I don't care if his blood's red, green or orange, but they're the right people. And as David said, until week and a half's time, we're not going to know, either of us, who we've got to work with. But whoever's there, you've got to embrace them and do what's best for the city.
Okay. Thank you both. We've run out of time already. It's gone so quick. But please remain on stage for the final opportunity to let the audience know why they should vote for you. So both stay where you are. You have 3 minutes each, and this time we'll start with Phil Major.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan. It's been a good night. Christchurch is on the cusp of realising the investment of the past decade. Our new facilities, our housing affordability and locations, we are the gateway to the South Island and Antarctic. That puts us in a strong position to attract new businesses and new families and more investment. But we need a council that is delivering for our community and providing the services that underpin a strong economy. Today, only 42% of you, residents, have faith in what we do. That's got to be turned around. My vision is to make Christchurch the best place to live, work and invest and play in New Zealand, and it requires a mayor who helps put Christchurch and Banks Peninsula on the map, and I will ensure we are not the forgotten second city, especially by central government, and I will work with anyone for the best of what the outcomes are for Christchurch. If we as a council want to make Christchurch an even better place to live and regain your trust and get stuff done, we need to focus on roads and footpaths, regaining your trust, looking after the environment, making Christchurch a better place to live, delivering core services better and keeping rates affordable and reduce debt. I know what it's like to do business in Christchurch, and as I said, I want our kids and grandkids to be able to do the same. For the last 3 years, I have been the councillor for Burwood Ward, which I've thoroughly enjoyed, but I can see how we can run it better at council. I know with my experience, my skill set and my dedication to Christchurch, that working together, we can make our city the best place to live, work, invest and play in New Zealand. Thank you very much.
David, it's your turn.
I'm looking forward to being part of helping enable a confident, forward-focused city to emerge out of Christchurch. A city that is proud of being New Zealand's second largest city, but also a city in Banks Peninsula recognised as a climate leader. A place that is actually attracting and making it easy for innovators and people to do business in the city. Our key strength as a city in Banks Peninsula actually is our people. We are vibrant, innovative, and this is an exciting place to be. That's not how others view Christchurch necessarily, and that comes back to a wee bit of us creating and developing our own story. And I'm just going to reflect something, and this actually comes from a council document. And I think if we just got close to even part of this, we would be a very vibrant city. And here it goes, is open to new ideas, new people, and new ways of doing things. A city where anything is possible. We just need a council and leadership actually to enable that to happen. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Phil and David, and thank you for taking the time to participate in this forum and for sharing your views.
Thank you.
And to everyone in the audience, thank you for coming along and also putting in some great questions to our candidates. It's been a great discussion, and it's great to see the passion and commitment that these two men have for this election. There's only 2 weeks to go. I understand only 8% of the public have voted, so hopefully this gives you a wee bit more clarity going forward. Now, the Chamber will have a few copies of the local government directive here tonight, plus you'll receive a link in a follow-up email. I'm going to hand over to Alice Moore, who's the co-founder from Mint Design, who's today's event partner, for some closing remarks.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa, and well done, David and Phil. So we've seen some differing opinions and ideas on stimulating economic growth and perhaps bettering civic engagement with our council. But despite any differences we may have seen tonight, it's clear that both of our candidates do want to see Christchurch move forward. Our past few local body elections have focused on rebuilding and recovery. Tonight we can finally feel a shift in focus. Since March 2020, we've all had to be quite reactive in our lives and in our businesses. We've had to keep a close eye on the short term, and that's not a great way for us to do business. Now we can regain our ability to think long term. And of course, that means thinking about sustainability. I want Christchurch to recast from being a city of rebuilding and recovery to being the city of sustainability, and a city that acts for sustainability. I want my daughter to grow up with spaces to play and learn. I want our coastal communities in Sumner and New Brighton to feel safe in our future. Plus, I just recently renovated our Ferrymead office, and I need to keep that estuary away from us. I want my business and my employees to be supported by strong, innovative leadership and to feel like we're contributing to a strong local community. Most of all, I want to continue being proud of the city that I call home, and I'm sure that's something that all of us here have in common. So please, if you could go onto your phone and answer our poll question, which is, did tonight's forum help you to decide who to vote for? Before we break for refreshments and networking out in the foyer, please join me once again in congratulating our candidates and the amazing Chamber team who made tonight possible.